My name is Julieta Marlowe. I'm 32 years old. Last Tuesday afternoon, I was kneeling on the kitchen floor of the townhouse I own, tightening the final bolt on a cabinet door that had refused to align properly. The instruction manual lay folded beside me, creased and smudged from overuse. A screwdriver in one hand. My phone balanced on the counter behind me, playing a low, forgettable podcast. Normal sounds, normal life. The kind of quiet domestic moment that convinces you you're building something steady. That's when Evan cleared his throat. I didn't look up at first. I remember thinking he sounded oddly formal, like he was about to ask for a favor he'd already decided he deserved. "Julieta," he said, "we need to talk." Those words always arrive wearing disguises. Calm voice, neutral posture, as if they aren't about to set fire to something. I turned around, still on my knees, and saw him standing near the kitchen island, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes focused, but not on me. He looked rehearsed. "You should probably stop what you're doing," he added. I stood, brushed sawdust from my jeans, and leaned against the counter. "What's going on?" He exhaled slowly, like he was preparing himself for a difficult but necessary task. "Julieta," he said, "I think it's time we acknowledge that this isn't working anymore." The words landed wrong, not because of what they were, but because of how casually he released them into the space between us, like he was announcing a scheduling conflict. I waited. He kept going. "My friends think I can do better." There it was. No apology, no hesitation. For a second, the room tilted, not dramatically, no ringing in my ears, just a subtle, nauseating shift, like missing a step on the stairs. "I'm out of the picture," he continued, "and I think you should start preparing for that." Out of the picture. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man standing in front of me with the one who had moved into this house 2 years earlier carrying nothing but a duffel bag, a coffee maker, and promises about the future. I'm a project manager at a regional finance firm here in Austin. Not glamorous, not flashy, but stable. This townhouse, 3 bedrooms, a small garden out back, hardwood floors I refinish myself, came to me in pieces. Part inheritance from my father, part years of aggressive saving and very unsexy budgeting. Evan never paid rent. He was finding his direction, building a brand, exploring opportunities. His income fluctuated wildly. Some months, a few $100s, some months, nothing at all. I told myself relationships weren't balance sheets, that support wasn't supposed to be transactional. He stepped closer. "I don't want this to get messy," he said, "so I think it's best if you start looking for somewhere else to live. I'll need a few months to get my finances sorted, but I don't want you to feel rushed." For a moment, I genuinely wondered if I'd misheard him. Somewhere else to live. In my house. The house whose mortgage statement arrived in my name every month. The house whose repairs I scheduled. The house whose tax bill I paid. He smiled, not warmly. A small, satisfied curve of his mouth, like he'd just executed a clean negotiation. "You've got time," he added. "I'm being reasonable here." I looked down at the screwdriver still clutched in my hand. The metal was cool against my palm. "I understand," I said. The words came out smooth, even. That seemed to throw him. "You do?" I set the screwdriver on the counter, aligning it carefully with the edge. "Yes." He blinked. I could see the gears shifting. He'd expected tears. Or bargaining. Something emotional he could manage. Instead, I was calm. His smile changed, became smug. "Good," he said. "That makes this easier for both of us." He turned away, already done with the conversation. I stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by half-assembled furniture and a future he'd apparently decided no longer included me. What Evan didn't know, what I didn't tell him, was that none of this surprised me. I'd been watching him drift for months, watching how his energy changed when he talked about his friends' lives, how he lit up describing promotions, engagements, expensive dinners, watching how he looked at our routines like they were temporary, settling. I'd noticed when "we" disappeared from his vocabulary. That night, Evan stayed up late on the phone, pacing the living room, voice animated. I heard names, friends, plans, possibilities. He talked about the house like it was already his, about how things were finally opening up for him. I let him talk. I let him plan. And while he imagined his upgraded future unfolding under my roof, I sat on the edge of the bed and understood something clearly. When he said I was out of the picture, he wasn't just ending a relationship. He was making assumptions. By the next morning, Evan acted like the conversation had been some kind of adult agreement we'd both signed. He made coffee like usual, bare feet on my hardwood floors. When I walked into the kitchen, he didn't look guilty. He looked relieved. "Morning," he said lightly. I opened the fridge and waited for the surge of emotion I expected. It didn't come. Instead, there was a strange clarity, like my brain had stepped back and started taking inventory. "I'm meeting Tyler and Brandon tonight," he said casually. "They want to celebrate. New chapter." They've been telling me for months I've been settling. Settling. In my house. "Tyler's dating this nurse practitioner now," he continued. "And Brandon, he's basically engaged. Destination wedding. Italy." He waited, like I was supposed to react. "And that means what?" I asked. "It means," he said carefully, "I want more, and I can do better." There it was again. I nodded once. His posture loosened. "Thank you," he said, as if I'd given him permission. "You're handling this really well. I figured you'd be more emotional." "I'm fine," I said. He smiled. That was when I understood something that made my stomach go cold. Evan genuinely believed I was about to scramble. That night, he left in a hurry. When he came back close to midnight, I heard laughter. Tyler's voice. Brandon's. "Yeah," Evan said. "She took it surprisingly well." A pause. "Because she knows you are right." I stayed still. Over the next few days, Evan fully embraced his new chapter. He updated dating profiles with photos taken in my living room. Creative, driven, ready to level up. My living room behind him. He hosted wine nights. Tyler brought someone. Brandon brought someone. They sat on my couch and talked about ambition and how some people were content being safe. "Julieta's nice," Tyler said one night, "but she's not exactly exciting." "Yeah," Brandon agreed. "Stable can be suffocating." Evan laughed. I sat in my office with the door closed and started moving quietly. Documents, photos, my father's tools. Not everything. Just what mattered. One afternoon, Evan leaned against my doorway. "Any luck finding a place?" "I'm handling it." He nodded, satisfied. That same day, I opened an email. "Patricia Chen, real estate attorney." I clicked. Evan didn't know it yet, but he'd already lost control of the ending. By the end of that week, Evan stopped pretending this was temporary. The shift was subtle at first. The way he left his shoes by the door instead of putting them away, like he'd decided the rules no longer applied to him. The way he started taking calls in the living room instead of stepping outside, voice louder, posture looser, as if the house itself had begun to feel like an audience. He didn't ask before inviting people over anymore. He announced it. "Tyler's coming by tonight," he said one afternoon, already pulling a bottle of wine from the cabinet. "And Brandon, just for a bit." I was sitting at the dining table, laptop open, mid-email. "I have a deadline." "It won't be loud," he said automatically, which I'd learned was code for "I'm not changing anything." They arrived just after 7. Tyler first, confident, familiar, like he belonged there. Then Brandon, carrying a six-pack and a grin that suggested he'd already decided what kind of story this night would turn into. "Nice place," Brandon said, glancing around. "Still can't believe you're letting her keep it so clean." Evan laughed. "She's always been organized." "Not I'm grateful. Not she built this. Just organized, like I was a helpful feature." I stayed in my office with the door half closed, the hum of conversation bleeding in anyway. They talked about money, about women, about what it meant to level up, about how being tied to the wrong person could stall your entire life. "Some people are just built for safety," Tyler said. "And that's fine, but it's not ambitious." Evan didn't disagree. Around 9, I heard a new voice. Higher, lighter, curious. Footsteps crossed the living room. A chair scraped. Then Evan's voice, brighter than I'd heard it in months. "Oh, Julieta," he called toward the hallway. "Come meet someone." I stood there for a moment, fingers resting on my keyboard, heart steady but alert. Then I stepped out. A woman sat on my couch. Attractive in an effortless way, dark hair pulled into a low ponytail, sharp eyes, posture confident. She wore a fitted jacket like she'd come from somewhere important. Evan stood beside her, one hand resting casually on the back of the couch. "This is Claire," he said. "She works in marketing downtown." Claire smiled. "Nice to meet you." I returned it. "Hi." Evan gestured vaguely in my direction. Julieta's transitioning out. The words landed between us, heavy and deliberate. Claire's smile faltered just enough to notice. "Oh," she said. "I didn't realize—" "It's fine," Evan cut in quickly. "We're adults about it." "Adults." I nodded once, polite, distant. "Enjoy your evening," I said, then turned back toward the hallway without waiting for permission. Later, I heard Claire ask, "So how long have you lived here?" Evan's answer was smooth, practiced. "Long enough." That was when it clicked. He wasn't just moving on. He was rewriting the story. Evan brought Claire over more often. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes for dinner, sometimes late enough that I didn't need to wonder what that meant. She walked through my house barefoot, like she was testing it, commented on the lighting, the layout, how much potential the place had if someone really invested in it. Once, she stood in the doorway of what used to be my office and said, "This could make an amazing studio if you knocked out that wall." Evan nodded like he was already imagining it. They started referring to the house as our place. Not once did either of them look at me when they said it. I adjusted my routines, worked later, took longer lunches, learned exactly which nights Evan would be home and which nights he wouldn't. I timed my movements like logistics. The storage unit filled slowly. First my books, then my winter clothes, then the framed photo of my father from the living room shelf, the one Evan had once called a little depressing. I removed it while he was out. He didn't notice. One afternoon, I came home to find the living room rearranged. The couch had been moved. New throw pillows sat where mine used to be. A piece of abstract art leaned against the wall, still wrapped in plastic. "What's this?" I asked. Evan barely looked up from his phone. "Oh, Claire had some ideas. We're just experimenting." Experimenting. With my house. "It's temporary," he added, like that made it better. I nodded. That Friday night, Evan hosted another gathering. Wine, laughter, music low but insistent. I stayed in my room, door closed, listening. At one point, I heard Evan say, "Once Julietta's fully moved out, I'm thinking of repainting. Something warmer, more inviting." Someone asked, "Is she okay with that?" Evan didn't hesitate. "She'll be fine. This is the right move for everyone." I stared at the wall across from my bed, pulse steady. Not because it didn't hurt. Because I'd stopped trying to correct him. By Monday afternoon, I was sitting across from Patricia Chen in a quiet office downtown, a legal pad between us, sunlight slanting through the blinds. She listened without interrupting. Then she folded her hands and said calmly, "Legally speaking, he has no claim here." Something in my chest loosened. "But," she added, eyes sharp, "what you choose to do next will matter." I smiled, just slightly. "I know." Patricia slid the legal pad closer. "Let's separate emotion from fact." Her office was quiet in a way that felt intentional. No clutter, no motivational posters, just framed certificates, a small plant by the window, and a desk that looked like it had never held anything unnecessary. "Fact 1, she said, tapping her pen. "The townhouse deed is solely in your name." "Yes." "Fact 2, your boyfriend has never paid rent." "No." "Fact 3, there's no lease agreement, no rent history, nothing that supports a tenancy claim." "No." She looked up at me, eyes steady. "Legally, he is a long-term guest." The word landed heavier than I expected. Guest. "In Texas," she continued, "occupancy is not the same as ownership, and without a lease, rent payments, or documentation, he cannot claim rights to the property." I exhaled slowly. "So I can ask him to leave," I said. "Yes." "And if he refuses?" "We can serve formal notice," she said, "but based on what you've described, I doubt he'll want that kind of confrontation." Patricia paused, studying me. "But I get the sense you're not here just to ask him to leave." I met her gaze. "No." Her pen stilled. "Tell me what you're considering." I leaned back, hands folded in my lap, and said the words out loud for the first time. "I don't want to sell the house." She nodded once. "I don't want to kick him out in the middle of a screaming match. I don't want to fight him room by room." I chose my next words carefully. "I want to remove myself from the equation entirely." Patricia's eyebrows lifted, just slightly. "Meaning?" "I want the house occupied," I said, "by people who actually have a right to be there." Silence stretched between us, not awkward, thoughtful. "You're considering leasing it," she said. "Yes." "To someone else?" "Yes." Patricia's smile was small, respectful. "That's elegant and completely within your rights." She walked me through the process. Tenant screening, lease duration, notice requirements, paperwork that would exist before anyone stepped foot inside. "You don't need to inform your boyfriend of your intentions," she said, "until the appropriate moment." I thought of Evan's confident smile. "I won't," I said. That evening, Evan was in the living room when I got home, phone pressed to his ear, voice animated. "Yeah, she's being really mature about it," he was saying. "No drama. Honestly, I think she knows this is for the best." I walked past him without interrupting. He flashed me a thumbs up when he hung up, like we were teammates. "How was your day?" he asked. "Productive," I said. He grinned. "Good. Because I've been thinking, once you move out, I might convert the spare room into a creative space. Claire had some great ideas." I nodded. "Sounds like a plan." Over the next week, I moved with purpose. I contacted a property management company Patricia recommended. Quiet, professional, efficient. They listed the townhouse discreetly. No photos that revealed personal details. No connection to me. Within 48 hours, they had inquiries. By Friday, I met Michael and Jenna, a couple in their early 30s, married, calm, kind. He worked as an ER nurse. She taught 4th grade. Solid credit, stable income. They walked through the house with a kind of reverence Evan never had. "This kitchen is perfect," Jenna said softly. "I've always wanted one with this much light." Michael nodded. "And the garden out back. We could actually grow something." I stood there listening and felt something unexpected. Relief. They didn't see the house as a stepping stone. They saw it as a home. We signed a 2-year lease the following Monday. Patricia reviewed everything personally. The terms were airtight. The move-in date was set. 8 weeks out. The rental income would cover my mortgage, property taxes, and leave a comfortable surplus. When I signed my name at the bottom of the page, something clicked into place. That night, Evan ordered takeout and poured himself a drink like he was celebrating something. "I talked to my mom today," he said casually. "She thinks this whole transition is really healthy for me." I smiled faintly. "That's great." He looked at me, assessing. "You're doing okay, right?" "I'm handling it," I said. He nodded, satisfied, because in his mind, handling it meant I was scrambling. By the time the move-in date was set, Evan had fully settled into a future he'd invented without ever checking the fine print. He walked through this house like a man who'd already won something. Casual ownership. The way he leaned against door frames. The way he spoke about the weeks ahead like they were already decided. He started telling people I was struggling. Not overtly cruel, just in that soft, sympathetic tone that let him sound generous while stepping over me. "I think she's having a hard time finding a place," I heard him say on the phone one afternoon. "Living in Austin isn't cheap, and she's, practical." Practical, like it was a flaw. That night, when he found me packing a box of books, he paused in the doorway. "You don't have to rush," he said. "I know this is probably overwhelming for you." "I'm okay," I said. He nodded, satisfied. "Good. I just don't want you to feel like I'm pushing you out." The irony sat heavy in my chest. He was pushing me out. He just wanted to believe I was leaving on my own. Meanwhile, his life got louder. Claire started coming over earlier in the evenings, left shoes by the door, hung a jacket on the hook by the stairs like she'd always used it. Once, I came home to find her at the kitchen island, laptop open, scrolling through renovation ideas. "Oh," she said brightly when she saw me. "We were just talking about opening up this space." "We." Evan didn't correct her. At work, I kept my routine normal. No visible unraveling. During lunch breaks, I finalized my own plans. A 1-bedroom apartment downtown. Secure building. 15-minute walk to my office. I signed the lease quietly. Move-in date. 3 weeks before Michael and Jenna arrived at the townhouse. Plenty of buffer. Back at the house, Evan mistook my efficiency for desperation. One evening, he sat across from me at the dining table, scrolling on his phone. He said casually, "Brandon thinks this is going to be really good for you. A fresh start." "Does he?" I asked. "Yeah," Evan said. "Sometimes people need a reset, something smaller, less pressure." "Smaller," I smiled faintly. "Maybe." He leaned back, comfortable. "You'll see. In a few months, you'll probably thank me." That was when I realized something important. Evan wasn't just assuming the house would become his. He was assuming the story would too. That in the retelling, he would be the one who outgrew me, and I would be the woman who couldn't keep up. I let him have it. By the 6th week, Evan stopped treating the townhouse like a shared space and started treating it like proof. The way he answered the door without checking if I was home, the way he corrected delivery drivers when they asked for my name, the way he referred to the house, casually, confidently, as if ownership was a matter of tone. "Our place," he said one afternoon into his phone. "Yeah, it's perfect for entertaining." I was in the hallway, close enough to hear every word. He hung up and turned, startled when he saw me. "Oh," he said. "Didn't know you were home." "I am," I replied. He shrugged, unbothered. "Anyway, Claire's parents might stop by this weekend. Just for a quick hello." "Her parents?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, already walking away. "They're in town. Thought it'd be nice for them to see the place." He didn't ask. Saturday afternoon, I was carrying a box of my remaining kitchen things to my car when Mrs. Patterson from next door waved. "Julieta," she called. "I didn't know you were moving out already." I stopped. "Already?" I echoed. She smiled sympathetically. "Evan mentioned it earlier this week. Said you were starting fresh somewhere else." I nodded slowly. "Did he?" "I hope everything's okay, dear," she added. "It is," I said, and I meant it. Inside, Evan was in the living room with Claire, arranging throw pillows like they were staging for a showing. Evan laughed. "Yeah, she's great. She's been really supportive through all this." "Supportive?" I set the box down gently. "I'll be out for a bit." No rush, Evan said automatically. Take your time. He said it like a favor. That evening, I overheard his mother on speaker, her voice faint through the hallway. Yeah, Mom, Evan said. She's moving out soon. It's actually been pretty smooth. A pause. No, she's fine. She understands this is better for both of us. Another pause. Well, it'll be our place now. I closed my eyes. Later that night, he knocked on my door. Hey, he said, leaning against the frame. Just wanted to check in. I looked up from the box I was sealing. About? My mom, he said. She might come by next weekend. I told her you'd probably be gone by then, but... But what? I asked. He hesitated, just a fraction. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. We. I met his eyes. We're not. Confusion flickered across his face. Then he smiled. The easy one. The dismissive one. You know what I mean, he said. About timing. I do, I replied, because the timing was precise. 2 days later, envelopes from the property management company arrived. They were addressed to Julietta Marlowe. I left them on the kitchen counter. Evan noticed them almost immediately. What's that? He asked, trying to sound casual. Paperwork, I said. His eyes lit up. Are you selling? There it was. Hope. Confirmation. I met his gaze. Don't worry about it. Everything's being handled. He smiled, satisfied, and walked away. That night, I heard him on the phone with Brandon. I think she's finally accepted it, Evan said. She's probably selling so she can start over somewhere smaller. He laughed. Honestly, it's really mature of her. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. 6 days until Michael and Jenna arrived. 6 days until Evan's version of the future met paperwork, keys, and a moving truck. I thought briefly about warning him. Then I remembered his words. You're out of the picture. So I stayed silent. Saturday morning arrived without drama. Just sunlight through the kitchen window and the quiet hum of a neighborhood waking up. At 8:45 a.m., I carried the last box of my clothes down the stairs and set it gently in the trunk of my car. Everything I needed fit neatly. Inside, Evan was in the kitchen making breakfast. Claire had spent the night. She stood at the counter in a silk robe I'd never seen before, one hand wrapped around a mug, bare feet on the same tile I'd scrubbed countless times. Comfortable. They were laughing about plans. Brunch, maybe furniture shopping. Evan didn't notice me until I closed the trunk. Oh, he said, glancing at his watch. Big day, huh? I nodded. Yeah. He smiled like a benevolent supervisor. You're doing great, Julietta. Seriously, this can't be easy. Claire looked at me, curiosity flickering. I'm excited for you, she said. New beginnings. Me too, I replied. At exactly 9 a.m., the sound of a diesel engine cut through the air. A moving truck turned onto the street. Not small, not subtle. It pulled up in front of the house with professional efficiency, hazards flashing. Evan frowned. That's not your mover, right? I didn't answer. A second car followed, then another. Michael and Jenna stepped out first, smiling, relaxed, holding coffee cups like this was the happiest kind of chaos. Behind them came Patricia Chen, crisp suit, briefcase in hand, calm as ever. And finally, a representative from the property management company, clipboard tucked under his arm. Evan froze. What the hell is this? He asked, stepping forward. Claire moved past him and opened the front door. Excuse me, she said sharply. Why are you people on this property? Jenna blinked. Oh, hi. We're Michael and Jenna. We signed a 2-year lease with the owner. We're moving in today. The silence that followed was absolute. Evan laughed once, a short, disbelieving sound. Lease? He said. That's not possible. This is my house. Patricia stepped forward smoothly. Sir, she said, voice level, I'm Patricia Chen, legal counsel for the property owner. She opened her briefcase and produced a folder. According to county records, the sole owner of this property is Julietta Marlowe. She glanced at Evan. You have no ownership claim, no lease, and no legal right to occupy the premises. Evan's face drained of color. No, he said, shaking his head. She's moving out. She told me she was handling it. I am, I said quietly. He turned to me, eyes wide. Julietta, what is this? I pulled my phone from my pocket. He called immediately, despite standing less than 20 feet away. I answered. Julietta, he said, voice shaking. You can't do this. You can't just kick me out. This is my home. I looked at him, really looked at him. Actually, I said, keeping my voice calm, you told me I was out of the picture, so I stepped out. His mouth opened, closed. The house went with me. It was like watching someone fall through a floor they'd been confidently standing on. But I live here, he said weakly. You stayed here, I corrected, as a guest. Patricia gestured toward the truck. Sir, we'll need you to vacate today. Claire had gone completely still. What do you mean you don't own the house? She whispered to Evan. He didn't answer her. Instead, he tried calling Tyler, then Brandon. No one picked up. By noon, reality had finished unpacking itself. Evan dragged boxes to the driveway in silence, hands shaking. Claire argued with him in sharp, hushed bursts, questions he didn't have answers for. Why didn't you tell me? I thought you let me believe. By 2 p.m., everything Evan owned fit into the back of his car. He stood beside it, eyes red, jaw clenched, anger finally replacing shock. This was cruel, he said to me. You could have warned me. I met his gaze. You told me I wasn't good enough for the life you wanted. He swallowed. I just made sure you got the chance to build it somewhere else. Michael and Jenna watched quietly from the porch, holding hands. As Evan drove away, I handed Patricia the keys. She nodded once. It's done. I got into my car and drove to my new apartment. Smaller, quieter, mine. And for the first time in weeks, I exhaled. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was buzzing like it had something to prove. Missed calls. Texts stacked on top of each other. Evan's name flashing until I finally turned the phone face down on the passenger seat. I didn't answer. I carried my last box upstairs, unlocked the door, and stepped into a space that was intentionally empty. White walls, clean lines, a single window facing the city. I set the box down and sat on the floor, and only then, only when the door was locked behind me, did the weight of it settle. Not guilt, not regret. Finality. I learned the details later in fragments. Evan had tried to stay calm at first, tried to negotiate, tried to convince the property manager there had been some kind of mistake. There has to be a misunderstanding, he'd said. We were building a life there. But paperwork doesn't respond to tone. Claire stopped speaking to him entirely. At some point, she pulled him aside, voice sharp and low. You told me that house was yours, she said. You let me plan my life around that. Evan tried to explain how it was complicated, how it hadn't seemed important, how he assumed. Assumed? Claire left in a hurry. She didn't look back when she drove away. Tyler texted back hours later. That's rough, man. Didn't know it wasn't yours. Brandon didn't respond at all. His mother called once, long enough to ask what happened, long enough to go quiet when the truth didn't match what she'd been told. She didn't come over. Meanwhile, Michael and Jenna carried boxes inside. They worked methodically, asked questions about the thermostat, the garden, where to put the recycling bins. Normal questions. That evening, Jenna texted me. We're all moved in. Thank you again for trusting us with your home. We love it here. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back. Take good care of it. I meant it. That night, my apartment felt quiet in a way that wasn't lonely. I ate takeout on the floor, city lights blinking outside the window. For the first time in weeks, my thoughts weren't circling the same questions. Had I been too harsh? Should I have warned him? The answer came clearly. Evan hadn't needed warning. He'd needed humility. The next morning, I woke up without dread. No footsteps in the hallway, no tension humming under every interaction. Just space. A few weeks later, I ran into Evan by accident at a coffee shop downtown. He was behind the counter. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. He looked smaller, thinner, tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. When he saw me, his shoulders stiffened. Hey, he said quietly. Hi, I replied. An awkward pause. I should have appreciated what I had, he said finally. I nodded once. Maybe. He waited, like he expected forgiveness, closure on his terms. I didn't give it to him. I left a $20 bill on the counter for a $5 coffee and wished him well. Not out of pity, out of distance, because the truth was I didn't want revenge. I just wanted him to live with the consequences of the life he chose without me in it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do when someone doesn't value what you bring to their life is to take it with you when you go. A few weeks passed before the story fully settled into its new shape. Not for Evan. For me. The townhouse stopped feeling like something I'd lost and started feeling like something I'd released. Michael and Jenna sent the occasional update, photos of the herb garden Jenna had planted, a message about how Michael finished setting up a small home gym in the basement. The rental income hit my account on schedule. Mortgage covered, property taxes handled, a quiet buffer growing in savings. My apartment began to feel lived in. I bought a couch I actually liked, hung art without asking anyone's opinion. At work, my focus sharpened. Meetings felt lighter. It turned out that when you stop spending emotional energy trying to be enough for someone committed to misunderstanding you, you get a lot of it back. Every now and then, Evan crossed my mind, but distantly. Like a chapter I remembered clearly but no longer needed to reread. I heard things, of course, that he was staying with a friend for a while, that the job at the coffee shop was temporary, that he told people the breakup had changed him. Maybe it had. But change that comes from consequence is different from change that comes from growth. I didn't reach out. I didn't need to. One evening, standing at my apartment window, watching the city settle into night, it finally clicked. This wasn't about a house or a lease. It was about what happens when someone mistakes your quiet for weakness and builds their future on that. Evan believed confidence was ownership. What he never accounted for was the person who had been holding everything steady while he dreamed. Me. I just wanted exactly what he asked for, a life without me in it. And sometimes the best response to being devalued isn't confrontation. It's clarity. You don't argue. You don't beg. You let them have their version of events. And then you take what's yours with you. I don't know when I'll meet someone new. I'm not in a rush. For the first time in a long time, my life doesn't feel like something I'm auditioning for. It feels like mine. And that's more than enough.